Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Hawkeye Speaks. Hope you're doing well today. It's Monday, January 15th, I believe. And today I'm just going to make a quick talk about how to definitively know what's going on with the climate. How to discern the climate science. How to make sense of climate science. Okay, the cats are playing on the stool, so I guess I'll hold the phone for a minute. Now, I've taken the time to dig into the climate science, to review all sides of the equation. And when I say taking the time, I mean years. I've been kind of giving everyone the chance to say what they have to say for the last several years. And this is all my understanding of what's going on in the world is predicated on an understanding of soil health and ecology. This was a real game changer for me, and I emphasize game changer because it is important to emphasize that I learned things about how the world works that I did not know before. I was just an average person with a relative degree of intelligence. I read books. I didn't have much formal schooling, but I've had various jobs and done, variety of things, just as a lot of people have, and I had a kind of standard set of opinions about what was going on in the world. But when I actually got into studying soil health and land management, things changed. I began to see the world around me much differently. And the key factor in that is I began to understand the nature of emergent properties, the nature of systems, nonlinear dynamic systems, and to begin to step into this realm of complexity thinking. So that's where I'm coming from. That's my foundation. I want to call out some camps for exercising, for operating on a platform of ignorance, but I don't mean to put people down, because I'm really I'm into anyone who cares about the environment. I think that's amazing and wonderful. I want us to care about the environment, even if our opinions say that we don't have a way to influence it. I mean, anyone, whichever side of the spectrum you're on, anyone that cares about life and cares about participating and fostering the ability for more life to be created, that's what I'm into. I'm not into morbidity. I'm not into hating on each other. I'm not into, stopping the ability for life to continue. All right. To me, that's morbidity. All right. So just wanted to share a few words about the platform that I'm standing on. Now, to jump right into it, how to discern climate science. Adding discernment. Well, as I said, I really looked quite deeply and gave all the different sides of the equation plenty of time to say what they have to say. And what I want to report back to you is that it's all true. It's all perfectly accurate. We're going to separate it into two main camps. We have the climate change science, the science they call it, but of course it's science on the other side too. It just is not as culturally agreed to. Okay, but anyway, climate change, the climate crisis. Okay, the idea that we have increased carbon content in the atmosphere, creating a warming effect, and that this could have catastrophic effect on the Earth's ecosystems. Sure. No need to argue it whatsoever. Okay. But on the other side, the science, which says that carbon does not have the potential to warm up the planet, does not have the atmospheric carbon, does not, it would in fact, many folks within the science on this opposite side have indicated for well over 100 years now that the more likely scenario is that an increased carbon content in the atmosphere would end up plunging us into an ice age than a catastrophic warming period. Okay, but predominantly one of the things that you'll see in the non-climate change, the climate deniers they're called, is the idea that humans do not have the ability to influence environments. Now that one, I believe, is wrong, actually. I believe that is just outright wrong. But it comes out of another idea that the Earth's living conditions and the cycles that we experience are governed by solar activity. And there is validity in that. Okay, we do have solar cycling that happens, and the idea that solar forcing can create changes, environmental changes on Earth, disruptions in the pattern. Yeah, similarly to the atmospheric carbon narrative, I have no reason to question that, really. As I said, the idea that humans cannot influence the climate, I believe that is quite foolish. That I think it's rather obvious that humans do influence the climate, but to really analyze how that works, we're going to introduce a third principle. And my primary reason for making this talk this morning, and to try to reiterate this idea that I have, is to not just introduce this third principle and say, hey, why don't you check this out? Here's another idea. Actually, I want to reframe this and say that this third principle that I'm going to speak of predicates. It comes first. It is the foundation of understanding. And if you don't understand it, you're not talking about anything that makes any sense to anyone, anywhere in the entire universe. Because the way that actually living conditions have been created and are maintained on our planet is through ecological systems, which means that we have to have a general understanding of ecology. And if we don't understand how these systems, the living systems of the Earth operate, and you can consider it as a living system or systems within systems, it doesn't matter so much. It's not particularly useful to take the Gaia theory and anthropomorphize it, which was a primary fear of Lovelock and Margolis when they chose the word Gaia to represent their scientific hypothesis. Okay, it doesn't really serve us from a scientific perspective to anthropomorphize the idea of Gaia, to vision the Earth as a single entity with feeling and emotion. In a spiritual realm, sure, that's great, okay, but on the scientific realm, we want to understand how the nonlinear dynamic complexity systems equal a larger system, systems within systems, all right? And as I was just indicating, the way that I'm trying to frame this now is to say that these two camps about the climate crisis, climate deniers, they're fine. There's truth in both of them, but they're both speaking about nothing that has any connection to reality if it's not based in a fundamental understanding of ecology. The way that the climate, the living conditions of our planet was created in the first place and how it is maintained is the conversation. Okay, to have a conversation about climate focused on atmospheric carbon warming the climate, well, the thing is, friends, that the planet that we live upon is not an inert object. It's not a car engine. It's not a piece of metal. It's not a group of inert objects. It is a living system, systems within systems, right? Cats keep almost knocking this over, but I think we're all right now. So what I mean by that, again, the idea that atmospheric carbon content is a regulatory feature of the environment, it generally presupposes that the environment is kind of a static situation, that it almost presupposes that the Earth is like a piece of metal, and the sun comes down and it just radiates the temperature back up at this even degree, and then it's the atmospheric carbon that determines what the finality of temperature is going to be. And it doesn't even make any sense whatsoever if you understand biology, if you understand the way that we got here. And that's again what I'm indicating, is that you in fact have to understand a bit about biological systems, which is ecology. And similarly, on the other side of the spectrum, the idea that the living conditions of our planet are governed by solar cycles, I believe there's truth in that. And it's a fun thing to study as well. You can check out Ben Davidson and the Solar Observers. You can check out Plasma Universe, check out Electric Universe, check out the Liquid Metal Sun, Sky Scholar. There's lots of different very interesting ideas, and in general, that big idea that cycles are governed by solar activity, that's great, it's wonderful, but still, the way that it actually works here on the planet is that we have a biosphere. That term it's a wonderful term for a reason, because the systems are governed by life itself. And when it comes to understanding ecology and making the personal choice to have this as our foundation and not the science, the thing is that, of course, we don't have multiple Earths and micro Earths that we can study in the laboratory. We have one Earth, and we cannot reduce it to fit into our laboratory to adhere to our scientific method, of replicability. Okay, that's why the idea of reducing science to the scientific method and the benchtop experiment is a fallacy in itself. Okay, because science should be based on the fundamental realities of nature and not the other way around. So it's a personal choice for us all to say that I'm going to predicate my understanding of the world around me on an understanding of how the world around me is working, not on what somebody else says, which is it's an interesting thing about the science and both of these camps, where we're taking this one, the atmospheric carbon element, this molecule which is so minuscule and is invisible, okay, and we cannot. There's not really a way to feel it, to experience it with our senses. Okay, there's no phenomenology of climate that enhances this atmospheric carbon idea. It takes a belief in something that we can't see, a faith. We have to put faith in the science and let other people tell us how it works. And similarly, with the idea that the Earth's living conditions are governed by only solar cycles, well, obviously we can see the sun, but these changes, they could be recorded over history. But anyway, it's always going to be a bit in the realm of speculation, and it takes us believing in someone else, putting our faith somewhere else. And the reason why I'm making a point of this is to say that it's important where we place our faith. I believe that we should place our faith more back in where the light is coming from, where the real truth is, which is in our hearts, and utilize a bit more of a balance between, empiricism and intuition, our fact and our feelings. Okay, let's bring these together, because I believe that in our heart of hearts, everyone would like to probably adopt the perspective that I'm suggesting, in which we could have a relative understanding of the way that the world works first. And then we can apply theories that we cannot, completely quantify through our own analysis, all right? So the way that the climate is actually maintained is through the actions of life itself, living organisms. It is through the respiration and digestion of living organisms, and particularly microorganisms, that we have the concentrations, the atmospheric gaseous concentrations that we do. It is through life itself that we have the presence of oxygen, 21% oxygen in the atmosphere, 77% nitrogen. Okay, and the reason why carbon is so minusculely small at 0.045%, up from 0.035% 50 years ago. Yes, there's been an increase, but the reason why it exists in such small percentages is because life has captured that carbon. Carbon is the basis of life itself, of all life. And that's why carbon is very important in the picture. And, it's important to gain an understanding of the role that carbon plays besides this kind of these facts and figures of that we cannot actually see or sense. All right. Because there's the other ideas such as a carbon tax. We must have a carbon tax. Well, once again, I'm saying if we don't understand that carbon is the base of all life, life as we know it, not silicon-based life, carbon-based life forms, the life of our planet, and it is what makes the conditions possible for life to continue. Again, it is the respiration and digestion of living organisms, carbon-based living organisms that create the atmospheric gaseous conditions, but also it's important to understand that it is the actions of animals that create the living conditions at the surface. And this goes from micro to macro. Okay, starting at the level of the soil. Soil in itself is built from a carbon matrix, okay, and then it is embodied with living organisms. And when we lose stabilized organic material, carbon, and when we lose life, organisms in the soil, then we have dirt, we have minerals, rocks and minerals, and we lose one of the Earth's primary regulatory features, okay? Because the role of soil is not to be just a base material for plants. The role of soil is actually like the clothing of the planet. It is a living matrix, and once again, you can anthropomorphize it if you want, but it's an agglomeration of organisms. It's a system built from systems. And once again, carbon matrix, okay? It's a carbon matrix that makes up the clothing of the earth, and the true function of soil is to mitigate all energy fluctuations, which there's many different types of energy. Okay, if you were to go online just a few years ago and look at how many types of energy there are, you would see that there was 10 listed. If you go on Wikipedia today and type in how many types of energy, there are 14 listed. So there's always been a bit of a varying opinion about how many types of energy there are and what they are. But I will assure you that they're all mitigated by soil. Okay, so the soil is the covering of the earth, but another way to look at soil is also like the terrain, the body. This is kind of like the living matrix of soil has gained the ability to grow upward. First, this happened in plants with the ability to create lignins, okay? And then plants grow up, trees grow up, so life is extending up from the surface of the earth. But similarly, organisms such as ourselves, we are the carbon matrix. We're pulling, collecting water, obviously, in phospholipid membranes, and this is an energy management system that is making up the surface of the earth. Okay, Lynn Margulis said, "Life does not so much exist on the surface of the earth as life is the surface of the earth." And she also had a quote right there in that same kind of paragraph of this book called What is Life that said, local ecology creates global ecology. And I've changed that just a bit to say local biology creates global ecology. Local biology creates global ecology. So it's understanding that the living systems of our planet, the regulatory features, are this. They're beginning with us. They're beginning with the ground beneath our feet. They're beginning with the microbiome. The microbiome is something we're understanding more, but it's not just a collection of organisms in our gut. It is the collection of organisms that make up the matrix of everything, including the soil, the plants, the surface of the earth. The surface of the earth is not inert material. It's not a piece of metal and a piece of clay. It's it's living substances. Okay, this is the surface of the earth. And once again, to go back to where we started, and the entire purpose of this talk is to say that this is the climate. This is Gaia theory that we're discussing. Okay, but this understanding of carbon matrix imbued with microorganisms, creating either soil matrix or macroorganisms. This is what creates the climate, what creates the living conditions that we enjoy. Okay, if we experience large-scale morbidity, a loss of life into breakdown particles that are escaping into the atmosphere and even potentially out of the atmosphere, we're going to experience instability, because stability, the climate, living conditions, ecological stability is created through life itself and the interactions of organisms. Okay, when we have a breakdown of life, we're going to experience instability. And to tie this back together, one of the hilarities within the science camp, okay, is this idea of global warming. What we actually see is we may see hotter temperatures in the summer. We may experience every year record high temperatures, but it's getting equally cold in the winter. In fact, it's getting extremely cold in the winter. And if you average out the temperatures over the planet, it's very, very hard to see that there's any significant warming effect occurring. Rather, it's quite easy to see that there's instability occurring, that we're experiencing hydrological cycle instability, which is potentially even what's driving temperature instability. Okay, are these two completely intertwined? I think that they are, but we could at least use them as metrics of just the physical parameters of, once again, the environment, ecosystems. Okay, but hydrological cycle instability, meaning that we're going to see very long periods with zero precipitation, drought, and then we'll see extreme rainfall events where the sky drops and we get 3 feet of rain in 24 hours. And this is exactly what we're seeing. Okay, so that's indicative of the hydrological cycle, the water cycle, which is the water cycle in general. It's we learned this in elementary school. It's very easy to get the basic idea of it, that the earth is made up 3/4 of water at the surface, and the water goes up into the sky through evaporation and transpiration and forms clouds, rains on the mountains, water comes down through streams into rivers and back to the oceans. That's the general idea about the water cycle. But we have to add some life to the perspective, okay? That again, as I was mentioning, all life is water being held in a suspension, in these phospholipid membranes. This is essentially one of the elements of what life is itself. But it's not just in macroorganisms, it's in micro, it's in the carbon matrix of soil. It's every function of life is a management of water. This is one of the elements of managing energy, okay? Excuse me. So, to truly understand the water cycle and effective hydrological cycling, you just need to add the element of that carbon matrix and slowing the water down. Okay, the regulatory features of life, of the living matrix of the surface of the earth, one of those regulatory features is, as I'm saying, to embody, to slow down the water. Don't just picture the hydrological cycle happening as if, once again, the earth is just an inert substance. It just falls on rocks and goes down the rocky streams into the rivers and slowly makes... No, there's a bit more to it than that. That we want water to be captured and held within the carbon matrix at every step along the way. And what actually happens is that more water comes out at the end. Water's not lost in the process. And there are many anomalous conditions about water, of course, but that being one primary amongst them, is that the hydrological cycle is improved the more it is built upon through these functions of the web of life, the carbon matrix. So yeah, we're experiencing instability, ecological instability, because stability is regulated through ecology. And this other elements about atmospheric carbon, fine. What you go study atmospheric carbon and look at it at a molecular level for 100,000 lifetimes. It makes no difference whatsoever to how basic ecological systems work. I mean, you can create, the most specific branch of science to focus on this element, this molecular element and its potential, but you are just completely out to lunch if your understanding of the world is not predicated on ecology. And similarly, studying the sun and the solar system, it's great. There's some very interesting ideas out there, but it still will not tell us about what is life. How about go and read those books? Actually, those are the fun ones that I like to read. I've read 10 of them now that are called What is Life? And you'll see that it's a mystery. The mystery of life is always a bit of a mystery, which is why it's easier to study these other aspects of science that can be more empirically researched, okay? But as I said, even though you can create a specific branch of science and specifically empirically research it, it requires us at a cultural level to employ faith, because we can't all see it in research. We can't see and feel the carbon in the atmosphere doing anything. So there's quite a strange disconnect there, where we need to maybe focus a bit less on the top-down approach and switch it around to the bottom-up approach, once again, predicating our understanding of the world on ecological understanding, okay? I'm going to tell you how it works because I'm observing what's happening right outside. And if my neighbor comes over, if we get 10 people together and we're seeing the same thing happening, then we're just talking rational sense. And if we can come up with a cohesive plan of action, then we're vibing, okay? We're on the right track. Whereas, it's very hard to do this with these camps in climate, because how do you actually affect things at the ground level? The only thing we can say is that we need to outlaw atmospheric carbon, we need to have carbon tax, so on and so forth. But once again, the entire basis of life is carbon. You're going to tax carbon. It needs to be more well understood, or else it's all a trajectory for ultra globalism. Okay, this whole climate science camp. And unfortunately, on the other side, the idea that humans can't influence the climate, it's governed by solar cycles, and there's a number of different ideas that the atmospheric carbon doesn't have a potential to warm. There's very solid science on that as well. But unfortunately, there's not a strong enough platform that does have to do with how the Earth works, okay? It's naysaying doesn't exactly equal like what people can get behind, because once again, you got to put your faith in, and the faith has got to equal success somehow in the long run. It's going to either equal a future where our children can go on living or not. It's going to either equal fecundity and the proliferation of life, or it's going to equal desertification and morbidity. And that's why, to me, I'm really into the idea of this idea in Buddhism that there are two kinds of people, wholesome and delusional. And once again, I'm not trying to offend anyone, and I've been delusional about many things in my life. Probably will be again. But in general, how does one become wholesome? Well, if we don't have a wholesome understanding of ecological function, we're always kind of misplaced. We can never fully direct our intentions to be in alignment with the needs of the environment if we don't understand it. So if we can kind of look at this wholesome or delusional, there's also the idea of real or fake. And once again, I'm not trying to be offensive to people. I think that we can all engage in practices that are kind of fake because they don't tie back to the reality of nature, biological reality. And we see society in a way moving in that direction of transhumanism. Okay, and I think that it is fair to say that if it doesn't reciprocate with nature, that it is in a way fake, plastic, or whatever, however you want to say that. But okay, so what on the opposite side of that, though? What is real? What is real? Well, of course, there's being in touch with our feelings, and There's being able to respond to different situations effectively, okay? But there's also, again, just as I was saying with wholesome, there is the potential that we need to be able to reciprocate our intentions with the needs of the environment. And if we can't do that, if we can't plug in with nature, we can't be real in a way. We're always stuck in this world of fakeness, delusional. So yeah, I want to advocate that everyone becomes more wholesome. And I don't mean that just in a wishy-washy way. I mean in a way that ends up being more fulfilling to you personally, to all of us, because I think it is actually what we want in our heart of hearts. All right. So anyway, just a few thoughts about what's going on with the climate situation. I urge everyone to predicate their understanding of what's going on with the world with an understanding of what's going on with the world. It's called ecology. It's again, just to reiterate, the basic thing is to say that the Gaia theory, okay, holistic management, the soil carbon sponge, permaculture on the large scale. I mean, these come first, okay? Your ideas about the sun, your ideas about carbon in the atmosphere, great, that's fine. But this is the foundation. We don't come after as a side note the Gaia theory, the indigenous wisdom of the planet, understanding non-linear dynamics. If you want to use those kind of terms, or if you just want to call it indigenous wisdom, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about when we're talking about living in communion with the earth, sensing the seasons and the time to take action, reading the signs that are given at every moment from all other organisms, okay, that are working in unison. Okay? I know that everyone can feel it in their heart of hearts, and that this is the place that we want to start from. I mean, not to tell you what you want, but I think in general, I think that we do want this. All right. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. Just a few thoughts about ecology. Peace.